My name is Eleanor Hayes, and I have been invisible for longer than I care to admit. I wasn't always. There was a time when my name meant something, not to the world, not in the way people chase influence or fame, but to one small boy who used to look at me like I was his whole world. To that boy, I was comfort. I was safety. I was love. That boy's name is Nathan. He is 33 now, married, working in finance, living in a well-maintained 4-bedroom home in the quiet suburbs of Portland. A home I bought, a home I no longer have a key to. They changed the locks 3 weeks ago. I suppose I should start with the house. Everyone's story has an origin point, and for me, it begins and ends with that house. A modest craftsman on Maple Lane. With blue shutters, I painted myself the summer Nathan graduated college. We picked them together from a paint swatch. I remember how he laughed at my hesitation. Come on, Mom, live a little. Pick the bold one. I did. I always did what he asked. Back then, I believed in the myth of sacrifice, that if you gave enough, waited long enough, loved hard enough, someone would notice. Someone would turn around and say, "You matter. You built this." But no one said it. Not when I paid the last installment of the mortgage. Not when I moved out of the master bedroom to make room for Nathan and his new wife. Not when they quietly started calling it their house. Just once. I wanted to be asked what color I wanted the shutters to be. Nathan met Vanessa in grad school. She was bright, ambitious, polished. The kind of woman who introduced herself with a firm handshake and always seemed to be scanning the room for someone more important to talk to. I never quite fit into her world. She came from money. Her mother taught political science at the University of Oregon. Her father worked in the governor's office. Her opinions were always expertly wrapped in condescension and served with a smile. The first time we met, she asked me if I enjoyed domestic service. I told her I had worked for a private family as a caregiver and household manager for nearly 15 years. She smiled tightly and said, "That's admirable. Everyone has their place." Their place. I never forgot that. For 15 years, I worked as a live-in caregiver for a woman named Catherine LeBlanc. She was everything Vanessa pretended to be: elegant, educated, generous without needing to announce it. Catherine owned a house that sat on a hill like it had always been waiting for her. She lived alone, having outlived 2 husbands and outgrown 3 more. But she was never lonely. She hosted book clubs, fundraisers, jazz nights in her garden. She made room for me in her life in a way no one else ever had. When she died, quietly in her sleep one Thursday morning, she left me everything. No dramatic reading of a will, no courtroom surprises, just a letter tucked inside her jewelry box, and a call from her attorney the next day. $8 million, stocks, property, trust funds. It was all mine. I hadn't told Nathan. Not yet. When I returned home that afternoon, suitcase in hand and tears still drying on my cheeks, I expected something, maybe a hug, maybe a welcome back, Mom. Instead, I found Vanessa scrubbing the kitchen sink with surgical precision and Nathan scrolling on his phone. I told them gently I wouldn't be working anymore. I had left Catherine's estate for the last time. My voice was still soft from grief. My body still numb from loss. Nathan didn't even look up. "You what?" he asked, flatly. "I've retired," I said. "It's time I slowed down." His laugh was sharp, bitter. "Slowed down, Mom? We were counting on that income." Vanessa didn't look at me, but I felt her judgment fill the room like a bad smell. "Postpartum support isn't free," she said, casually. "And I really don't think we can afford a proper baby nurse without your contribution. You should have discussed this first." I opened my mouth to explain. To say I wanted to help, of course I did. I came back early to support them, to hold Vanessa's hand when she got scared, to rock the baby when they needed sleep. But they didn't want me in that role. They wanted me in a uniform, with a paycheck. It hit me then, with brutal clarity. I wasn't family. I was infrastructure. By that weekend, I'd been asked politely, of course, to consider alternative housing arrangements. The guest room was too small for a nursery, Vanessa said. And besides, a full-time nanny would need the space. Nathan mentioned a senior residence not far from town. "It's got activities," he said. like I was a toddler in need of daycare, and meals, and even yoga. They offered to help me pack. I didn't cry. Not then. Not when they carried my suitcase down the porch steps. Not even when Vanessa handed me a brochure for the retirement complex like it was a gift card to a spa. I didn't cry when the Uber driver asked if I needed help with my luggage, but I cried when I walked into Grace Mitchell's living room and she wrapped me in her arms without a word. Grace had been my friend since before Nathan was born. We met working night shifts at St. Anthony's, back when we were both still trying to decide what kind of women we'd become. She had a sharp wit and soft heart, and a husband who adored her but gave her hell just to keep her interested. They never had children, and over the years, she and I had grown into each other's chosen family. "You're staying here," she said, before I could even ask. "The guest room's got new sheets and a lock on the door. You're not going anywhere until you've had a good cry." A hot bath, and something covered in cheese. I sank onto her couch and finally let it all fall out of me. The betrayal, the exhaustion, the slow realization that I had spent my entire adult life pouring into a boy who no longer saw me as a person. "Do you regret it?" Grace asked gently. I thought about that. About tiny Nathan in my arms, wheezing through his first winter. About the night I stayed up stitching his Halloween costume until sunrise. About every skipped meal, every late bus, every extra shift just to make sure he had a better shot than I ever did. "No," I said finally, "but I regret never teaching him how to love someone back." We sat in silence for a long time after that. The kind of silence only old friends can share without it feeling heavy. Eventually, I stood up and walked over to the window. The neighborhood beyond Grace's porch glowed soft with dusk. Houses lit up from the inside, lives unfolding behind glass. "I have money," I said, almost to myself. Grace looked up. "Come again." "I haven't told them, but Catherine left me everything. 8 million. In a trust. I haven't touched a dime." Grace whistled low. "Hot damn." "Eleanor." I turned back to her, a strange kind of calm settling over me. "They think they've gotten rid of me," I said, "but they have no idea what I'm capable of." She grinned and raised her wine glass. "Let's remind them." I didn't tell Nathan about the inheritance that night or the next, not because I was unsure, but because something inside me had shifted, settled, like sediment in a glass of water. The more it rested, the clearer everything became. Grace offered to drive me to the senior residence they'd picked out for me. She said it with a grin, but I saw the fire behind her eyes. "Let's see how this place stacks up," she said. "I want to know where they were so eager to dump you." I almost told her no. I wasn't going, but curiosity won out. So we went. The place was clean, polished, the kind of senior community with soft classical music in the lobby and color-coded meal plans. A woman behind the front desk greeted me like I was a lost child. "Hi there. You must be Eleanor. We've been expecting you." Expecting me? That phrase haunted me. They had reserved a room. They'd submitted my paperwork. Nathan had sent over my prescription list, even filled out a dietary preferences form. Everything had been decided before I ever stepped through the doors. Not once had anyone asked if I wanted to live there. I smiled at the receptionist, turned to Grace, and said, "Let's go." Back in her car, I rolled down the window, breathing in the crisp Oregon air. Spring was warming the edges of the wind, and the cherry blossoms were starting to show. I felt two things at once, deep grief and a flicker of power. They'd made their move. Now it was my turn. 2 weeks passed quietly. I stayed at Grace's, helping in the garden, making breakfast, trying to shake the habit of listening for footsteps that weren't mine. She let me be quiet, which was the kindest thing anyone could have done. I didn't respond to Nathan's messages. There weren't many at first. A few short texts. "Let me know when you get settled. Nicole says you left some stuff behind." But then they changed. "Mom, we need to talk about the bills. Are you planning to come back and help out or not? Vanessa says it's not fair to be carrying all this by ourselves." I didn't reply. I didn't owe them explanations. Instead, I called Jordan Becker, a lawyer Grace knew through her nonprofit work. He specialized in elder rights and property law areas I hadn't known existed until I suddenly became the cautionary tale they were written for. We met in his downtown office. all clean lines and quiet competence. After reviewing my documents, bank statements, mortgage records, tax filings, he looked up at me with a slow, measured nod. "You've been financially supporting a household that's legally no longer yours," he said. "And they're now trying to sever your role in the family structure without relinquishing the benefits they've received from your contributions." "That sounds about right," I said, my voice dry. He tapped his pen against a folder. "You may have a case for a constructive trust, especially if we can show that your financial support was significant and sustained, and that it directly enabled them to acquire or retain property." He paused. "But before we talk about legal action, let me ask, what do you want, Mrs. Hayes?" That question caught me off guard. I had spent so many years asking what others needed, what Nathan needed, what Catherine needed. I didn't remember the last time someone asked what I wanted. The word felt foreign in my mouth, like it belonged to someone younger, more entitled, more free. "I want my house back," I said. "Finally. I want what I gave up for them. I want the right to live with dignity, not be exiled for becoming inconvenient." He nodded slowly. "Then we start there." That night, I cooked dinner for Grace and me. Nothing fancy rosemary chicken, roasted vegetables, a bottle of red we both pretended to understand. She watched me quietly over her wine glass. "You've got that look," she said. "What look?" "The one you had when you decided to raise Nathan on your own. Like you've just walked into the fire, and you're not afraid of the burn anymore." I smiled. "I'm not." Grace reached across the table and took my hand. "Then go burn the whole damn house down." Ellie. The next morning, I drove to Maple Lane. I didn't text or call. I just showed up like a mother does. Vanessa answered the door, dressed in yoga pants and a sports bra, her hair pulled into a tight bun. She looked surprised, but recovered quickly, plastering on a smile like it was her job. "Eleanor," she said, "we weren't expecting you." Clearly, I stepped past her into the entryway. The living room looked different. My reading lamp was gone. The walls had been painted a sterile gray. There were designer throw pillows on the couch, and a framed quote on the wall that read, "Gratitude turns what we have into enough." I stared at it for a moment, then turned to find Nathan standing in the hallway. He looked older, tired. There were dark circles under his eyes. "Mom," he said, cautious. "What are you doing here?" "I came to collect the rest of my things," I said. "And to tell you, I won't be paying the mortgage anymore." A beat of silence. Then Vanessa laughed a short, humorless sound. "What?" "You heard me," I said, my voice steady. "Starting this month, the mortgage payments are your responsibility." Nathan blinked, stunned. "But you can't just stop," he said. "We're not in a position to—" "You are now," I cut in. "You've made that very clear." Vanessa folded her arms. "This feels retaliatory." I looked at her. "No, this is liberation." Over the next hour, I gathered my belongings, what few they'd allowed me to keep upstairs. The rest was already boxed up in the garage, labeled Mom, old stuff in Vanessa's handwriting. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I took my boxes and walked away. As I pulled out of the driveway, I saw Nathan watching from the upstairs window. He looked like a boy who had just realized the treehouse wasn't his after all. But he didn't come down. He didn't stop me. He wouldn't stop what was coming. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of regret, there was none. What kept me up was the silence, the unburdening, the hollow echo of a space inside me that had always been filled with guilt, and for the first time in years, was simply quiet. The silence was heavy, but not unbearable. It was the kind of weight that reminded you you'd been carrying something too long. After midnight, I pulled out the box of records I'd kept since Nathan was a baby. I still had every bill, every receipt, every certificate. I'd told myself I kept them in case of emergencies. But the truth is, I kept them to remember who I was. Because when people erase you slowly, you start collecting paper to prove you ever existed. I met Nathan on a rainy October afternoon in 1991. I had been volunteering at the Child Services Center 2 days a week after my shift at the clinic. Back then, I was married to a man named Russell Hayes, who liked quiet dinners, organized closets, and the idea of children so long as they didn't require too much noise or interruption. Nathan was just 11 months old. malnourished, half the weight he should have been, with a faint blue tint around his lips. The staff said he had a congenital heart defect and had been found in a cardboard box behind a gas station. No one knew who his parents were. He'd survived the first year of his life in and out of emergency care, barely hanging on. But what I remember most were his eyes, big, glassy, and completely still, like he'd already stopped expecting kindness. I held him for the first time that day, just to soothe him while one of the workers took a call. He didn't cry, didn't flinch. He simply leaned into my chest like he was already tired of being afraid. I never put him down. Russell was furious when I brought up adoption. "We don't know anything about him," he snapped. He could have a dozen problems. What if he dies within a year? I told him I'd already made my decision. He gave me an ultimatum. Him or the child. I packed my bags the next day. It took 6 months, 3 court hearings, and every last penny of my savings. But I became Nathan's legal guardian before he turned 2. I worked double shifts, found an apartment near the children's hospital, and learned every term in the cardiology handbook. For 3 years, our lives were a rotation of surgeries, recovery, and hope stretched to its breaking point. But he lived. God. He lived. He ran, laughed, scraped his knees like every other kid. He loved peanut butter sandwiches and hated socks. He called me Mama Ellie, even after he learned it was just Mom. I never told him about Russell, or the gas station, or the fact that, legally, his last name could have been anyone's. To Nathan, I was the only parent he had ever known, and I wanted it to stay that way. When he was 6, I started working for Catherine LeBlanc. She was recently widowed and needed someone to manage her house and personal care. I expected the usual tasks: laundry, groceries, managing the pill box, but Catherine was different. She asked me what I liked to read. She noticed when I cut my hair. She asked about Nathan like he was her own grandson. And slowly, she began to open her life to me. She taught me piano, brought me along to gallery shows, introduced me to people who didn't ask what school I'd graduated from before deciding how much I mattered. She never had children. Her only niece had distanced herself years earlier over a disagreement about money. She told me once, over tea, "Family isn't blood. Eleanor, family is who shows up." When Nathan went to college, it was Catherine who helped cover the difference when he lost his scholarship. She never made a fuss, never asked to be thanked. She simply gave, the way only someone who had once had nothing could give. I worked for her until her final breath. When her attorney contacted me 2 weeks after the funeral, I thought it was about unpaid invoices or closing accounts. Instead, he handed me a folder with my name on it. In her own handwriting, Catherine had written, "To Eleanor Hayes, who gave me more life than I ever gave her in salary. You have been more than a companion. You have been my family. Everything I own, I leave to you freely, with no conditions, and no explanations owed to anyone. Let them talk. Let them wonder. You have nothing to prove. Use this life for yourself now. With love. Catherine Marie Leblanc." The trust included $3, $5 million in securities, a downtown Portland apartment, a lakeside property in her name, stocks in her late husband's firm, an additional $4, $8 million spread across accounts I was now sole beneficiary of. $8 million. I had cried when I received it, not from greed, not even from surprise, but from the strange, aching sorrow of being seen so completely by a woman I had served, but who never treated me like a servant. Nathan never asked where the tuition money had come from, or why my wardrobe got nicer that year, or how I managed to buy a second-hand Subaru in perfect condition. He never asked. And so, I never told. It wasn't out of malice. It was out of fear. I feared that once he knew I had something to offer that wasn't work or obedience, he would want the money, but not the mother. Now, in Grace's guest room, I flipped through the paperwork again. Trust details, property deeds, the handwritten letter from Catherine. For years, I'd been afraid to use it, afraid it would change how people saw me, that it would make Nathan's respect more performative, that it would reduce me to a purse string. And I had been right, because they'd thrown me out the moment I stopped paying. It wasn't the money I grieved. It was the meaning of the years I gave him. The Saturdays making pancakes, The Christmases where I filled the tree myself while he slept in. The day I bought him his first car and he barely said thank you. I did it all believing it was shaping him into someone who would one day look back and say, "She made my life possible." But instead, I had created a man who thought my usefulness ended the moment my income did. The next day, I told Jordan Becker about the inheritance. His eyes widened slightly. "Well then," he said, leaning back. "That changes everything. I don't want to use the money to punish them," I said. "I just want to reclaim what I gave." He nodded slowly. "You're not punishing them. You're correcting the narrative. And you have every right to." He paused, then added, "And Eleanor, I'm glad you're telling me, because now we have leverage." The next step was mine. And for once in my life, I was going to take it without asking permission. It's a strange thing. Freedom. You expect it to come with music drums, trumpets, something triumphant. But for me, it arrived on a Tuesday morning in the form of a perfectly ordinary envelope. Inside was the legal paperwork Jordan had drawn up. A formal cessation of mortgage payments, a motion to place a constructive trust on the Maple Lane property, and a cease and desist addressed to my son and his wife, requesting that they stop representing the house as their sole property, while I retained financial interest. It was, by all definitions, professional, but to me, it felt like a declaration of self. I wasn't walking back into their lives to ask. I was walking in to claim. I signed the documents at Grace's kitchen table. She made coffee stronger than I liked, put on Aretha Franklin, and told me, "You're not fighting them, Ellie. You're just reminding them who built the damn roof they're standing under." I laughed. The kind that comes from deep in the belly, surprised to find itself alive again. That afternoon, I went shopping for the first time in years. Not for anyone else. No Christmas lists. No grandchild wish lists. No just grab something for the house. Just me. A new coat. Real leather boots. A navy blue dress that felt like it belonged to a woman I used to be, or maybe wanted to become. And then something unexpected happened. I passed a window with a help wanted sign. Rosie's Cafe, a quiet, cozy place I remembered from years ago. Without thinking, I stepped inside. Rosie was wiping down the counter. She looked up, saw me, smiled like we were already old friends. "You here for coffee or curiosity?" she asked. "Both," I said. She handed me a menu and a pair of reading glasses without asking if I needed them. I liked her already. We chatted for nearly an hour. I told her I used to manage a household and a kitchen. She told me they needed someone reliable, who wasn't afraid of early mornings or burnt toast. At the end of it, she asked if I could start the next day. "I'm 58, I said, more out of habit than warning. Rosie shrugged. "You've got 2 working hands, don't you?" I grinned. "2 of the best." The next morning, I put on my new boots, tied my apron, and opened the cafe with Rosie. There's something healing about small routines. Brewing coffee? Greeting strangers. Scrubbing a countertop so clean it squeaks under your palm. I hadn't realized how much of myself had disappeared into silence, years of being needed, but never seen. Here, I wasn't anyone's mother, not someone's servant, just Eleanor, the woman who remembered how to make perfect hash browns and could fold napkins into swans if you gave her 5 minutes and a toothpick. I felt human again. 2 weeks in, I was promoted to lead shift. 3 weeks in, I'd memorized the morning orders of half the regulars. 4 weeks in, I got my first paycheck and cried in the car because it had my name on it, and no one else's. Freedom, I was learning, doesn't always start with revenge. Sometimes it begins with dignity. Of course, Nathan noticed the silence. After the formal notices were delivered, he texted first. Then he called. When I didn't pick up, he began showing up at Grace's. Not banging on the door, he still had a sliver of pride. But loitering, waiting, hoping I'd emerge with a softened face. I didn't, and then came the message that changed everything. "We need to talk. Nicole's pregnant again." I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because the news hurt, but because it didn't. I didn't feel joy or sadness, just a dull, polite numbness. Like hearing that someone you used to know had won the lottery after telling you they hoped you'd starve. Later that day, a card arrived in Grace's mailbox, expensive paper, embossed lettering. "We hope you'll reconsider." Family is family. Let's not let money ruin that. It was signed, with love, Nathan and Vanessa. I nearly laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was the clearest lie I'd seen written in gold ink. That night, over tea, Grace asked me if I was okay. Better than I've been in 20 years, I said. She watched me for a moment, then nodded. You're not just coming back to yourself, she said. You're becoming someone entirely new. I smiled into my cup. Not new, I said. Just finally. Mine. 3 days later, I stood outside an open house for a newly developed villa community on the edge of town. I hadn't planned to buy. Not really. But something told me I should go. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something louder. Something like destiny. The sales agent was young, respectful, and clearly nervous. Until I showed her my financial documents, then her voice steadied. Her attention sharpened, and her questions became less careful. Would you like the corner lot? She asked. I looked at its sunlight on the hardwood. Space for a garden. A reading nook by the fireplace. Yes, I said. Let's write it up. She blinked. Would you like to see the others first? No, I said. This one already knows me. I signed the paperwork that afternoon. Full payment. No mortgage. When the pen left the page, I felt something shift in my ribs, like my lungs had just expanded past all their old limits. This wasn't just a house. It was proof. Proof that I could build a life not on guilt or sacrifice, but on intention, on worth, on freedom. By the end of the week, I had packed my few things at Grace's and moved in. I sent Nathan a single message. I hope your baby is healthy. But this is goodbye. Please respect my choice not to be part of your life. It is no longer a place I feel safe. He didn't reply. But a few days later, he showed up at Rosie's. He looked tired, older, more worn than a man his age should have been. Mom, he said softly, can we talk? I dried my hands on a towel and stared at him. I could see the boy he once was beneath the man who had tried to erase me. I have 15 minutes, I said. Then I go back to work. He nodded. We sat in the corner booth. He tried to smile. I didn't return it. You look good, he said. I am good, he hesitated. I'm sorry for how things happened, for how I treated you. I waited. I didn't realize what I was doing until you were gone, until the payments stopped, until I saw how much we depended on you. And what are you sorry for? I asked, softly. That I left, or that you lost control. He looked away. Vanessa's words echoed in my memory. She used to be a housekeeper. What would she know about childcare? He finally said, We didn't mean to push you out. You didn't mean to, I said. But you did. And now you want me to forget. No. He swallowed hard. I miss you. I looked at him, really looked. And I realized something I'd been afraid to admit. I didn't miss him back. A week after Nathan visited me at Rosie's, a video began circulating online. It was a live stream. Someone had screen recorded it and posted it on a Facebook group called Adult Children of Narcissists. The caption read, My mom chose money over family. Watch how she left us. And there he was, Nathan, my son, sitting in a dimly lit room, hair disheveled in a way that looked carefully unkempt. Behind him, a playpen, a half-assembled stroller, and a strategically placed ultrasound photo. He looked like grief incarnate. I'm not trying to bash my mom, he said, but after everything, after raising me, after putting me through college, she just disappeared. Like I was disposable, like we didn't matter anymore. He took a breath and looked into the camera. She's living in a mansion now. Won't answer our calls. Left us high and dry right when Vanessa got pregnant again. My wife cries every night. My daughter asks where Grandma went. My hands trembled, but I didn't pause the video. I let it play, let the lie run its course. I get it. She worked hard. She wants peace. But cutting off her own family, walking away from her grandchild. All for a checkbook. He shook his head. I don't want her money. I want my mom back. The comments were immediate, half sympathetic, half enraged. Disgusting. A mother who walks away like that isn't a mother at all. She sounds selfish. Let's hope karma does its thing. I'd do anything to have my mom alive. He's right to be upset. Damn. Sounds like she got rich and dipped. And then came the private messages. Anonymous accounts calling me greedy, manipulative, even evil. One woman sent me a message that read, "Women like you don't deserve children. Hope you rot alone in that mansion of yours." I didn't respond, not yet. Instead, I called Jordan. He answered on the first ring. "Have you seen it?" I asked. "I have," he said, voice already calm and legal sounding. "We'll issue a takedown request and prepare a defamation claims." I shook my head, even though he couldn't see it. "No," I said, "not yet. Eleanor, I want them to see first. Not just what he said, but what really happened." There was a pause. Then, "How far are you willing to take this?" I looked around my sunlit kitchen. My shelves, my photos, my name on the deed, all the way. 3 nights later, I went live. I'd never streamed anything in my life, but Jordan helped me set it up. I used a simple title, "My Side of the Story from Eleanor Hayes." Within minutes, viewers began to trickle in, mostly curious, a few hostile. One person commented, "Is this the narcissist mom? She looks harmless." Another, "Bet she's about to lie through her teeth." I leaned forward. "My name is Eleanor Hayes. I began. I'm 58 years old. I raised my son, Nathan, alone from the time he was a baby. And recently, I walked away not from my family, but from a pattern of being used." I kept my voice steady. "I didn't leave because I had money. I left because they stopped seeing me as a person." I held up a printed spreadsheet. "These are my bank statements. Every mortgage payment on the house Nathan and Vanessa live in for over 10 years was made by me. Even after I legally transferred the house to them, I continued paying. They never offered to take over." The chat buzzed. "Wait, she paid for their house. This is wild. Got receipts. Why would she pay if the house isn't in her name?" I uploaded a scan of the deed transfer and mortgage receipts. And then the adoption certificate. "I adopted Nathan when he was 1. I said, "He was abandoned behind a gas station, born with a congenital heart defect. I left my marriage to raise him." Another wave of shocked messages flooded in. "She's not even his bio mom." "Wait, she left her marriage for him." "He didn't say any of this. I never told him," I continued. "Not because I wanted to lie, but because I wanted him to grow up feeling whole. Not like someone's second choice. I worked 3 jobs to keep him alive. And then I gave him a house." I paused. "And the moment I stopped paying, he threw me out." The video blew up. Within 24 hours, my stream had 800,000 views. I was trending on Facebook and Reddit. People started calling Nathan the ingrate son. Someone made a meme of him holding the ultrasound photo with the caption, "My mom bought my house, paid my bills, raised me alone. But now she's the villain." And then the tide turned. Vanessa deleted all her social media accounts. Nathan went silent. But the damage was done. I hadn't just told my side of the story, I had reclaimed it. That week, Jordan filed the defamation claim. The live stream takedown, the cease and desist, and the foreclosure notice? Because it turned out Nathan hadn't paid a cent on the mortgage since I stopped. They were 3 months behind. On a rainy Tuesday, Vanessa emailed me. Subject, "Please, we didn't think you'd actually go through with this. Nathan is spiraling. I'm 8 months pregnant. You don't need to do this. We're family." I wrote back, "Family doesn't push you out and slander your name when you stop paying their bills." Then I forwarded the message to Jordan and blocked her. I didn't feel joy. Not exactly. But I felt something deeper. Control. Ownership. Peace. I had no intention of making them homeless. I wasn't out for revenge. But the house was mine now. Not just legally. Spiritually. And they would never forget that. The house was mine again. Not just on paper. Not in whispers behind closed doors. But in truth, in law, and in silence. The kind of silence that wraps around you like a wool blanket, a little scratchy. But real. Nathan and Vanessa moved out quietly. No final confrontation, no desperate apologies. Just a typed notice left in my mailbox, confirming they'd vacated by the end of the week. The only thing they left behind was a crib in what had been the guest room, still wrapped in plastic. I stood in that room for a long time. The walls were gray now, Vanessa's favorite modern neutral. But underneath, I could still see the old robin's egg blue peeking through from when Nathan was 8 and wanted an ocean room. I almost smiled. Then I closed the door and didn't open it for a month. Grace came by the first weekend after I moved in. She brought sourdough, wine, and a 3-wick candle that smelled like some expensive forest no one could actually afford to live near. "You did it," she said, walking the old floors like a museum curator. "You really walked through the fire and came out with the deed in one hand and your dignity in the other." I raised my glass. "To clean slates," she clinked it gently. "To earned ones." The house felt different with just me in it. Quieter, of course, but not empty. I moved slowly those first few weeks. Not out of caution, I wasn't afraid anymore, but out of intention. I wanted every drawer, every corner, every picture frame to speak my name again. I boxed up the throw pillows, the generic art prints, the cookbook Vanessa never opened but left on display. I repainted the living room. Not robin's egg blue, not gray, sage, the color of beginning again. In the kitchen, I hung Catherine's old copper pans, a gift she once said was too good for anyone who doesn't cook with heart. I cooked for myself every night. Lamb chops, pasta from scratch, a roast that took 6 hours and was worth every minute. The piano from Catherine's study was moved into the sunroom. I played in the evenings, nothing fancy, just muscle memory and feeling. Once, the mailman paused outside to listen. The next day, he left a note. "Didn't know Chopin lived here now. Thanks for the music." Rosie gave me Saturdays off after the video went viral. "Take time to breathe," she said. Even as orders piled up, I've never seen anyone go from anonymous to icon that fast. "I'm not an icon," I told her. She laughed. "Maybe not, but you're a reminder. That's almost better." On Sundays, I sat at the cafe with a journal and wrote letters I never sent to Russell. To Nathan. To the girl I once was when I took my first overnight job to afford Nathan's surgery. I wrote to Catherine the most. Sometimes I read them aloud. "You'd be proud," I said once, in the stillness of the sunroom. Not because I have money, but because I finally used my voice. Then, one morning, a letter arrived. A real one. Envelope, stamp, handwritten address in ink. From Nicole Carter to Eleanor Hayes. I sat on the porch swing and opened it with steady hands. "Dear Eleanor, I know I am the last person you want to hear from. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not writing to plead. Just to say something I should have said years ago. You were right. About all of it. About how we treated you. About the way we took, and never asked what it was costing you. I watched Nathan fall apart after the truth came out. Not because he missed you, but because he couldn't recognize himself in the mirror anymore. We have filed for divorce. He is not the man I thought I married. And the truth is, maybe I never really knew him outside of your support. I'm raising my daughter alone now, and the baby on the way, but I will never tell them lies about you. You did more for us than any mother-in-law ever could. You didn't deserve what we gave back, and I will carry that knowledge for the rest of my life. Sincerely, Nicole." I sat there for a long time. The wind stirred. The glass on the table trembled slightly, and I let myself cry not from pain this time, but from relief. Not all people change, but some learn, and sometimes that's enough. Nathan never wrote. I didn't expect him to. Some distances aren't meant to be closed. A few months later, I started teaching piano. Not for the money. I didn't need it. I taught for the girl who used to believe she'd never have time for music. For the woman who only played in secret after everyone had gone to bed. For the part of me that was more than a mother, a worker, a servant. I put an ad on the local board. I charged almost nothing. My students ranged from 6 to 60. One of them, a teenage boy named Micah, came to me after his father died. He said he didn't believe in much anymore except music. "You don't have to believe in anything right now," I told him. "Just show up." He did. Every Thursday, rain or shine. I started writing. 2, Grace pushed me into it. "You have a damn good story." "Ellie," she said, "and not everyone who survives writes theirs down." So I did. Not as revenge, not as memoir, just as witness. To love, to loss, to the brutal, beautiful work of choosing yourself. The house is quiet these days, the kind of quiet that doesn't ache. I keep fresh flowers on the kitchen counter. I bake bread once a week, even if I'm the only one eating it. I send half to Grace and leave the rest in little wrapped bundles at Rosie's. I sleep through the night now. I don't wait for footsteps, or permission, or praise. I wait only for the sun. Sometimes I still think of Nathan. Not with rage, not even sadness. Just a kind of distant ache, like a ghost of a bruise you press gently, wondering if it still hurts. But it doesn't. Not really. He chose his path, and I chose mine. People ask me sometimes, now that everything's quiet, if I'd do it all again. Would I take him in? Would I raise him? Would I give up my marriage? My time. My body. Would I pour my whole life into someone who, in the end, turned away? And the answer, strange as it sounds, is yes, because the point wasn't whether he became the man I hoped. The point was that I became the woman I was meant to be. And she is worth everything. A year has passed. The seasons turned the way they always do without asking permission, without waiting for anyone to be ready. The wisteria bloomed along the porch railing this spring, just like it used to when Nathan was little, except now I sit with my morning coffee and watch it alone. And it's enough. Rosie's cafe expanded. I still help out on weekends when they're short-staffed. But these days, I spend more time teaching than bussing tables. Micah plays Chopin now slowly, but with more feeling than most adults I know. Grace jokes that I've become the town's patron saint of quiet comebacks. I laugh, but part of me thinks maybe that's exactly what I am. Not a hero, not a martyr, just a woman who stopped waiting for someone else to hand her peace. Nicole sends a holiday card now and then. Her daughter, my former granddaughter, is tall and bright-eyed and carries none of the bitterness her father once did. I don't see her in person. That's Nicole's decision, and I respect it. But I send a piano book each birthday, signed only with my first name. Sometimes love doesn't need a title. Sometimes presence isn't physical. There's a photo on my mantle now. It's not of Nathan. It's of me taken by Grace, on a whim. One autumn afternoon, I'm sitting in the garden, dirt on my hands, a laugh caught in the middle of blooming. I don't remember what was funny. I just remember that I wasn't pretending anything in that moment. It's the first photo of myself I've ever framed. I think of Catherine often. What she left me wasn't just money. It was a map. A way out. A whisper from one woman to another. Take it. It's yours now. All of it. And I did. Not out of anger, out of love. For her, for the life she taught me to claim. For the woman I found at the end of the road I thought would break me. I walk often now. Around the lake, through the market, past the bookstore where they know my name and hold the new titles aside. People recognize me sometimes. From the video, the story, the fire I walked through. They ask if I'm that Eleanor. I smile and say yes. Then I tell them the part the headlines missed. That sometimes healing looks like repainting your kitchen. That justice can taste like homemade soup. That rebirth isn't always loud sometimes. It's just the quiet choice to keep living. Fully. Truly. For yourself. I'm not just a mother. Not just a survivor. Not just a woman who was once forgotten. I'm Eleanor Hayes, and I remember myself now every single day.